Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Final hour of the program. And 'tis the season for political interviews. And like I mentioned yesterday, we're coming pretty much on a month before early voting begins for the November 3rd elections. And this time it's going to be a longer ballot as we have the municipal elections on the same day as the presidential election. And joining us in studio right now, Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope. Welcome back.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me this morning. It is early voting starts on the 12th? 13th. Yeah. So we're just a month and a couple of days away.
Yeah, it's not long at all. And of course, you are seeking your third term.
Yes, sir.
As Lubbock Mayor, which it's that the third term is something that you don't see a lot of Lubbock mayors seek. It's not something that it is quote unquote normal, I guess you would say, for Lubbock. I think Wendy Sinton was the last 3-term mayor. Why'd you decide to run for a third term?
I think simply there's work left to be done, things we've started and yet to be accomplished. I think we've got a council that's making a positive impact on our community. I think our common sense, conservative financial leadership is finally taking hold. It's not something you can flip the switch. You start, but it takes a number of budgets, and this is our 5th budget that we just approved this week. So there's a lot of great things going on in Lubbock, Texas. And I'm proud to be part of that. And so it's in some ways very similar to when I first made the decision to run. My kids are grown. We sold our business a few years ago. I've got the time to do it. And I frankly enjoy it quite a bit. And even after now 6 months of pandemic, I still wake up every morning and looking forward to serving the people of Lubbock.
Yeah, when you decided to run for reelection, obviously the pandemic was not going on.
That's correct.
With the pandemic going on, does that increase your desire for reelection? You may have some people who go, okay, I want to be done with this whole thing. I'm done now. After the pandemic, does it increase what you want to do in a third term, or how does that change? Because obviously plans are going to have to change.
Yeah,
moving into the future, right?
Yeah, so plans have changed, and I really think it's a great question. There have been a couple of days, I have to admit, during the pandemic where I was wondering if it was a good idea to run for a third term. I just was sort of beat down. But that's not what I believe in my heart. And I think probably the third term is in some ways getting us back on track. I mean, we went into this pandemic, Chad, I think maybe at an all-time high. We'd been around 3% unemployment for a number of months, several handfuls of months. We had created 10,000 net new jobs over a 4-year period. Some of the really good jobs, not just call center jobs. I mean, the type of jobs we're creating are going up. I think we talked about the budget. We're making progress on transportation, whether it be Loop 88 or Interstate 27. I mean, I really think and some of that momentum still exists. I think Lubbock will bounce back. Has shown that we'll bounce back quicker. We've had 2 very good sales tax months. We get another bit of data today. Our unemployment is coming down. There's still too many people not working. That's something top of mind to me. But it may reframe what the third term looks like. But I am up to that, and our council, I believe, is up to that. And I want to make certain that we get back to that spot and then go past that spot as we go down the road.
Something that I think a lot of mayors are going to be asked about across the U.S. Governors are going to be asked about it when their time comes up for reelection, is their handling of the pandemic. Looking back on it, most of it's out of your hands now and out of the council's hands, as the governor has kind of taken away y'all's decision making on a number of issues. Looking back on the early decisions and everything else, is there anything you would have done differently? Is there anything you wish you would have done? Or do you think Lubbock handled the pandemic locally the way they needed to handle it?
I think in general we've handled it, the community's handled it very well. I'm sure there's decisions that I made that if I had to go back and look at every one of them, I might have done something a little bit different. I think the two most difficult political decisions I've ever made were, you'll remember in 2011 when we were on the school board and we had to eliminate 90 positions after 2008, and that was very difficult. Now, we kept the classroom whole, but that was a difficult decision. Equally as difficult was the decision in late March to close down non-essential businesses.
Yeah.
It's just one of those decisions that I'll never forget. And we did that at the time, knowing what we knew then. We did that to protect our citizens. I think public safety has been top of the list. That's what, if you read the charter, that's our job. It's job one for the council. So that was, I think it was all done through that lens. And we wanted to, at that point, protect our hospitals. We know a lot more today. One of the reasons we're not as concerned about the 2,100 new cases in the last 2 weeks, we're concerned, but we're not as concerned, is that 65% of those, 66% of those are in the 18 to 24-year-old demographic.
Right.
2/3 of them.
Yeah.
Well, their chances of having to use the hospital for COVID-19 are not very significant. In fact, they're much, much, much less than someone my age or even older. And so we know that now. There's things we didn't know then. But, we're going to be judged for it. I know that. I get a lot of comments about it, good and bad. And, I pray for wisdom and for good judgment. I listen to the people that know more about it than I do, and then we try to make the very best decisions. And in that regard, that's a record that I'll have to run on, and I'm proud to do so.
You're and this is something that even the governor's going to have to answer to Republican voters who are out there. And I say Republican because for the governor and for many who are out there, Republican is always seen as pro-business or normally seen as pro-business. Yeah. And you've got a lot of business owners out there who are sitting around going, what happened? Why me? Why did you do this to my business? Yeah. And I know you touched on it and you spoke to it. To those business owners who are out there, who are looking at you and your leadership moving into a third term, what can you say to them that basically say you can trust me moving into a third term, that I've got your back moving into a third term?
Well, I think first I would apologize. I would say, I for any damage that this caused you, I truly would offer my heartfelt apologies. I've always looked at and will always look at the world through a small business person's eyes. That's who I am. I had a question yesterday at our press conference, and it was that question I get asked nearly every week about, with all these cases, at what point would you consider closing Lubbock back down, or would you consider? My answer was very simple. It was no. We're not going to do that. We know enough now. We understand that we can get our economy back where it needs to be. And so I think what I would tell business owners is after I would empathize with them, I would say, let's pull up our boots. Let's talk about what we can do to make you successful. I mean, I know I talked to the governor's chief of staff over the weekend. There's one part of our economy that's still hurting. Our bars aren't open. Yeah. And, we've got to find a way, I think, to safely get them reopened. And many of them have, with the TABC has been relatively, I think, and the governor's office have been creative and have found ways to safely reopen. And we've got, I'll give Logie some ups. I was down on them early on because I don't think they really followed the protocols. They've reopened and they're doing it pretty well. I've not been there, but our, TABC's been there, Fire Marshal's been there. We get good reports. They're taking it seriously. I think, that's one of the things we need to accomplish. We need to get those people back to work. A lot of moms and dads work in those restaurants.
Yeah.
And it's important to me that people are able to work, because if they're able to work, then they're able to support their family, and live the American dream, stay off the dole. It all fits together. So that would be my comments.
Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll have at least one more segment with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope, and we'll talk about his reelection, some recent votes, and other issues as well, moving into what he hopes to be a third term as Lubbock's mayor. We'll be right back. All right, back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope in studio discussing his reelection campaign, what he wants to do in a third term. Mayor, some of the things that have come up lately, and I know you've been asked about this a couple of different times. You have state lawmakers who are, they've sent a letter, I think, to you and to the entire council about Planned Parenthood coming back to Lubbock. They want, I guess, you and the council to basically outlaw Planned Parenthood here in Lubbock and have Lubbock become a sanctuary city for the unborn. What are your thoughts so far on that?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm glad we get to talk about it. I'm unequivocally pro-life. I need to make sure that's where I am. I'm very, very much so pro-life. We did get a letter from Senator Perry, Representatives Frulo and Burrows, with a proposed ordinance that they'd like us to consider.
Right.
That would make Lubbock a sanctuary city for the unborn. I asked the city manager to do two things. First of all, let's get it to our legal, like we would with any other ordinance. We want to ask questions around enforceability and constitutionality, those type things. The second thing I asked him to do is to respond to our elected officials and let them know that we'd send it to legal and that council would be briefed at the earliest possible time. And open meetings law as it is such, we can't just sit in the hall and talk about it. We've got to schedule a meeting to do that. And
right.
My guess is that we will do that at executive session on the 22nd. I know the council is ready to hear what our legal team has to say about it. So that's what's going on. And we sent a letter back to our delegation. I think it dropped yesterday. We'll release a copy of that on Friday. We want them to get it before we put it out there publicly, much like they did with their letter to us. Personally on this, to take it a little bit further, I think the smallest government is the best government. I've been reluctant and have been against ordinances that we've either gotten to the council with or have been sort of proposed. To me, a good example would be payday lending. It's not enforceable. It's not in the charter. There's nothing in the charter that gives us oversight of financial services. I get emails about, ordinances around the sanctity of marriage, man and woman, or ordinances to strengthen LGBTQ rights in Lubbock. I just have always said no, that's not the lane that we need to be in. We need to do the things that we were elected to do: provide police and fire services, make sure that our parks are maintained, make sure that we take care of our streets, do the things that citizens elect us to do. And so, anytime we look at a new ordinance, I'm going to look at it personally through that lens. And so I look forward to what we hear from our city attorney's office, and we'll decide what the next step is.
Yeah. Do you look at it, or does it come in? Because we've had some people who have also texted in on this issue, and they've said, that they're 100% pro-life. They don't like Planned Parenthood, but do you go down the slippery slope of saying, okay, if we're going to ban this type of business or this type, whatever you want to call it, then the city council could pass another ordinance saying we're going to ban this type of business over here. Does that create an issue in the future?
I think it potentially does. I think telling Planned Parenthood they can't come to Lubbock would be in some ways like telling United they couldn't build another store, or telling the Southern Baptist Convention they couldn't do another church start in Lubbock. So, I mean, there's some I think it is a slippery slope. That's, again, my personal belief. It's, I don't think we need to be telling business what to do. But it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And I'm in a lot of ways, I'm glad we get to deal with it. I think we can have meaningful discussion about it, and the council can decide how we want to move forward.
Talk real quick. We've got a couple of minutes, and we may pick this back up when we come back from the bottom of the hour break. You apologized in a video for taxpayer money being used to help fund a business that your wife has a small stake in.
Yeah, so we've done 71 downtown grants through Market Lubbock in the last 3 years, 2.5 years. That's an incentive where you give business property owners sort of that little nudge they need to improve their property. We've invested about $1.8 million in Market Lubbock funds. The private sector has invested more than $50 million, about $27 of private investment for every dollar in public investment. So the program's been very successful. In fact, every one of those has passed the council, and I think everyone's passed unanimously. And so my wife is the partner in a restaurant that will open later this year. A partner, she's a minority investor in a restaurant that will open later this year. The incentive went to the building owner. The restaurant will be leasing that property. However, I missed it. I should have recused. And it was brought to my attention by a media outlet. And when it was, I said, hey, that's a mistake. And I wanted to go publicly out and tell my story first. And there's been some media reports around it. I think there's more coming. And, that's the shoes I walk in. That's when you go into public, when you hold a hand up and say you want to run for office, you're held to a different standard, and I missed the mark on that one.
Was this something that was part of a consent agenda?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so and for those who don't know, when it's on a consent agenda, there's really no debate. This is something that's just kind of passed. And
remember, these are scrubbed very closely at the Market Lubbock board level. I mean, that's where they get into the details. I sit in on those board meetings often if I'm in town or if available, but comes to us as more of a ratification, but regardless, it was on there. I should have seen it, and I missed it.
Let's talk about the future of that, of just that program, and then we'll wrap up the interview when we come back here on the Chad Hasty Show. We'll also talk about other future ideas and plans for the city of Lubbock, maybe including the Canyon Lakes area and any other development that we may see. We'll be right back with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope. Back on the Chad Hasty Show. We'll have one more segment here with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope as he is seeking a third term as Lubbock's mayor. We were discussing this grant program. Have there been any of these grants that have been turned away by the council, or how does that process work? And do you expect that process to continue? And on top of that, I guess, should there be more attention paid instead of it just being on a consent calendar? Should there be more debate over some of these grants that are being handed out?
Yeah. So I think we would, as a group, deem it successful. I do think there's a useful life. So I think at some point it would go away. I think probably a lot of that would be based on demand. We have expanded it to the eastern part of the city. So we've taken the same program into a defined area in East Lubbock and have had some success there with the same program. There was a lot of discussion early on with the program. There have been a few grants that there was discussion about specifically. I would imagine that they would remain on the consent agenda because most of the the deep dive on these is done at the Market Lubbock LEDA board level, and that's they're the ones that are really held accountable. It comes out of their budget. That's where the work is done. I think the council trusts that it gets done correctly. If there's no money is expended until the work is done, Chad. And in fact, this very grant in question no money's been expended on it because the work hasn't been done. You have to prove the work's all done, send your invoices, and just prove that they're paid, and then you get that percentage that's agreed to up front in the grant.
We've had a few people who have texted in this morning who are looking back at the budget and saying, wait a minute, it seems like the effective tax rate is here, but my bill, it seems like it's still going to go up. Talk a little bit about the budget. Are people going to see a tax increase, and how does that work moving forward?
Yeah, so let's talk about the budget, then the tax increase, and what that means to us in our homes. The budget, our general fund budget, that's everything else is supported by user fees, water, LP&L. Let's talk about the general fund. That's police, fire, parks, library, streets, the things people think of when they think of the city hall. General fund budget's going to go up about 0.3% this year, about $600,000. We're not defunding public safety, not defunding police. In fact, that $600,000 total increase, public safety is getting about $1 million of increase. So everything else is going down about $400,000. That budget does not include a pay increase for our employees. That budget does fund 92% of the vehicles we're going to pay for this year, we're going to pay for in cash. We'll do $20 million worth of capital projects in cash. We'll still do our $10 million in street maintenance in cash. Maybe most importantly, we'll pay down $108 million in debt this year. We're starting this common sense, conservative, kind of fiscal, financial decision making starting to pay off. It takes a while for it to work, and we're seeing that pay off. So the tax rate is going to go down 1.61 cents, about 3%. So a homeowner, their tax bill their city part of their tax bill, let's make sure the city part of the tax is a little less than a quarter of your overall property tax bill in general. It's between 25 and 23%. Your city portion of your tax bill will not go up as long as your appraised value didn't grow more than 3.1%. If it grew a little more than that, you're going to pay a little more city tax. If it grew less than that, you'll pay less city tax. So it's not simple to explain, but our tax rate did go down. The last 2 years, it's gone up a penny. We've been paying for our public safety initiative over the last 2 years, our police substations and crime lab, municipal court. So we've restored most of that. It's a tight budget, but I think it's a budget that we can operate in. It's a balanced budget too, by the way. You know this. We have to operate with a balanced budget, but it's important we tell people that because the feds don't, and
right.
we don't have that choice.
Something that if you do win a third term, something that's probably going to come up during the next legislative session is taxpayer funded lobbying. Where do you stand on that? Where should Lubbock be on that? Should the city fund lobbyists who go down to Austin?
Well, from my perspective, as the guy who spends a lot of time in Austin anyway, I can't imagine the amount of time I would spend there during a session if we did not have some help in Austin. It's critical to what we're doing. I mean, and you know how the session works. There's for 90 days, there's a lot of jockeying. And then if it gets serious, and then in the last 30 days, most of the work gets done, and often they suspend the rules. And so instead of something having to be posted for 72 hours, it can be posted and they can take it up overnight. So from my perspective, I think I would end up being in Austin. We potentially would have to hire somebody that works for us that would be there all the time. There would be a city employee. I don't know that we save any money, frankly, so I got mixed messages about it. I do think that.
Do you think the lobbyists are always on the side of the taxpayer, though?
I think, it's a good question. I think our lobbyist, I feel good about our lobbyist. We have we use a firm now that this we'll use again for the second session. Before that, we used a different firm. We work real hard at looking at their conflicts because the different people that they represent. One of the reasons we're with the firm we're with now is they didn't have as many conflicts as our previous firm had. There are times when you've got to, as an elected official, you've got to ask them to stay out of an issue because they'll come to you and say, we've got to stay out because they've got, maybe they're working for the city and for a utility or a telecom. And so there's a lot more to it than just the talking points around it. And I think the folks that we hire to represent us in Austin do a great deal to help our citizens, much more positive than negative as I look at the overall tally.
We had, before we let you go, we've had a lot of people who've texted in about the Planned Parenthood deal. As I'm sure you're not surprised about that.
No, I'm not.
One person who does have a question here says, if the ordinance came up for a vote, let's say next week or the week after or whenever, and legal said everything was fine, how would you personally vote on it, either today or that day?
Well, I need to see the ordinance in its final form. I can't say how I would vote for the ordinance until I saw it. I can't imagine that the ordinance in the form that it came to us would be the final form. As I've looked at other cities around the state that have considered this, that ordinance has been changed, and some cities had gone as far as, or sort of gone to the more passing a resolution in support of something like this. I can't talk in hypotheticals about that. I'm pro-life. I'm going to stand strong on that stance, but until I see an ordinance, I can't say I would vote on it.
And then for North and East Lubbock, obviously there's been a lot of talk about what the future is going to look like for North and East Lubbock. Going into a third term, is that something that is going to be a priority of yours, is development in North and East Lubbock?
I think the whole community is a priority to me, and I spend a lot of time in all parts of the community. I do think that the Canyon Lake system, which runs from the north, to the south through the east part of our community, is in some ways an untapped resource. It's a real jewel of our community, and we're attracting more people there to do things outside, to enjoy. It's very family friendly, and you'll see us start to try to develop, connect those lakes with trails. We've got trails around most of them today. I think there's a lot of state wildlife. Parks and wildlife grants for those type things. And one of the reasons we're updating our parks master plan this year is to qualify for those grants. So I'll continue to advocate for all parts of our community. We have a couple really large economic development prospects right now, 3 or 4, actually, all of which are considering North and East Lubbock for where they might locate. I think we can do that and not have a negative impact on neighborhoods. I think that's important to me. I know it's important to the people in any part of our town, but particularly in North and East Lubbock.
Yeah. Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope, appreciate your time. We'll get you in at least 1 or 2 more times before Election Day, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you again.